we'll do a summary at the end of this webinar, which is topical stuff. But at the moment, going up to the end of October, the Halloween budget in the UK, potentially some horrific tax increases going to come in. Also, dramatic changes are going to come in, which will benefit the taxpayer allegedly, but also penalise people. And these are the issues that we want to look at. When we're looking at succession, the money that you've earned, the business that you've built, the mortgage that you've paid off, the house that you've saved for and built and improved, and the savings that you've made, and the pensions that you've invested in all your life to look after yourself and pass on to your next generation, to your children, are potentially now going to be taxed. And this is the issue of succession, inheritance tax planning and capital gains tax, that the threat is from the new Labour government in the UK to attack people living in the UK and abroad. It's important for expats to realise that under non-dom rules are changing, but once you become domiciled to the UK, which is by birth if you're a UK citizen, or after a number of years spent in the UK, you become liable to inheritance tax at 40% on your worldwide assets. So it's potentially quite a penal tax that's got some exemptions, it's got some quirks, it's got some exceptions, and if they're done away with and it becomes a flat rate 40% tax on everything, then that could be a heavy price to pay, not on you during your lifetime, and maybe not on your widow on your first death, but certainly that your children won't inherit that wealth. In the news at the moment, the succession planning, the family planning of the Murdoch family is in the news. Slightly different circumstance, but let's just have a look at this, what it is about, because this is relevant to how you can try and protect your family and business and investments across border and down generations. So what Rupert Murdoch has done during his life is build up one of the biggest companies in the world. It's worth over £200 million, and he settled the shares of that business into a family trust many years ago, and once he's done that, he effectively can't change the rules, and his 4 children are equally going to benefit from that. His 4 older children, I should say. He's been married 5 times and has actually got more children that aren't necessarily in this trust, but they're benefiting other ways. So this biggest massive news media empire that they built up is all protected, so that the 4 children will benefit, and in turn their children will benefit, but also saving from capital gains tax, inheritance tax and probate costs on death. Now that's not necessarily going to save anybody any taxes in the real world. So a company is still going to pay corporation tax, property rental taxes, income taxes, dividend taxes. It's not going to save you taxes now. What it does, saves you the cost and delay of probate. It also saves you the cost and delay of inheritance tax. So for a UK expat, that's potentially 40% of your assets. So if you go £1 million on death, you could pay 40% in tax on that. What the family trust of the Murdoch family was designed to do is to protect that and make sure that the 4 children benefit equally. 30 years later, Rupert Murdoch is 93, still alive, and recently remarried yet again. So good for him. And if I get to 93, hopefully I'm still happily married, but if I can remarried, I still want to protect my children, protect my inheritance, and protect my business from changes. But the family trust that was set up puts control and beneficiaries in place. Now, the dispute that's going on is that Rupert Murdoch, the businessman, still running at 93, his biggest news media empire in the world, wants to hand power and control to one particular chief executive son. I would be happy to do that if one of my sons wants to take on my business. But the problem is when he set up the trust, it meant that the four children equally, with equal control and equal benefit. So that means even though the son may be chief executive of the business, the trustees can override him. The trustees are like a holding company board. They've got an oversight over the business and the assets and the sales and the distribution of those. And that's what the issue is at the moment. So when you do make a family trust, it's important that you've got the arrangements in place. Whenever we're reading a will for a family, generally it takes less than half an hour for us to be asked, when do I get the money? Now, if you've got a probate involved, you've got at least a notice period of 6 weeks, 45 days. But in practice, a probate administration is going to take anywhere from 16 to 52 weeks in the normal course of events. Debts, tax returns, all need to be paid and settled and brought up to date before the assets can be distributed. So avoiding the cost and delay of probate can be very beneficial for a family and for a widow. So that's one benefit of a family trust. A second benefit is that you can avoid inheritance tax by gifting assets within the family to spouse and children. You can avoid or defer capital gains tax or inheritance tax. So gifts to a trust can be free of inheritance tax during your lifetime, or potentially exempt gift over 7 years. So something to look at and benefit from if you wish. Referring to the Halloween budget at the moment, each individual has an exemption of $325,000 on first death, and if you're a married couple, that $325,000, the inheritance tax is not applied until second death. So that allowance is not likely to be reduced, the $325,000. However, it could be that instead of waiting until second death to apply inheritance tax, it could be applied on first death. So that would be an easy change to make, and it would bring forward their tax assessment. On the argument that the basis that the widow doesn't need the same amount of money to survive, she only needs half of it. That's already been applied in certain circumstances to pension funds. So if you've got a defined pension scheme, that annuity it dies with you generally, or it might provide a widow's pension. The widow's pension is normally 50% of the whole. Now, it could easily be in the Halloween budget that it could extend that principle to money purchase to independent self-invested pension plans. But at the moment, in many cases, the whole fund can be handed over to the family without necessarily paying any capital gains, any inheritance tax or anything else, although it is income when it's paid. So again, that's an opportunity for them to extend that, simplify it, and apply inheritance tax to a pension fund. So suddenly a pension fund of £1 million paying if it's paying a 5% pension on that 100,000, that's 50,000 a year. So it is very easy to have a very large pension fund which could yield on death a large inheritance tax liability for the government. Now they can make that part of inheritance tax, or they can make it a separate pension tax and extend the existing limited applications extensively. So in effect, 50% tax is applied to a pension fund on death. So that could apply to all pension funds. Now pension funds are in a trust already and they're taxed under that tax law. So as soon as you put tax-free, tax-deductible money into a pension, you're subscribing to a system where there's tax in and tax out, and it makes it very difficult. However, it's still an area where they could potentially extend inheritance tax, so it makes inheritance tax planning all the more important, because your pension fund could easily be worth £1 million, 2 million, 5 million, even 50,000 or 500,000 could add a significant amount of inheritance tax liability to your whole estate. So if you've got a 500,000 pension fund, it's wiping out your personal allowance of 325 and bringing your family property, your investments and any other valuables that you've got into inheritance tax at 40%. Another area where the Halloween budget could attack the succession and the inheritance liability is that assets that need to be sold in the probate administration to distribute the estate to the beneficiaries currently are exempt from capital gains tax. Now the reason that is that inheritance tax is a capital gains tax, so why would they apply 40% inheritance tax and capital gains tax? But if you're in the government and you're changing the way that things are done and you want to raise more tax on the wealth and savings and investments that people have created during their lifetime from their efforts, from their savings, then why not change the rules and tax them even more? So instead of putting up the inheritance tax rate, you could actually charge capital gains on the rental property or the share sale or the investment sales before they're then assessed on the estate for inheritance tax. So you get two bites of the cherry then as a taxman to do that. Now double taxation there would come into it, and whether that would be politically ability to apply that is a different matter. But again, the principle applies, whether they apply inheritance tax on first death instead of on the spouse's second death, whether they include pension funds or not pension funds, it's a way of extending the benefit. Another area that could be attacked is that principal private residence relief is available when you sell your own or main home, and it's also, you get this additional £350,000 allowance for inheritance tax, so that could easily be removed as a complication as well, and deemed to be an asset that's passing over to a next of kin, and that disposal could fall under capital gains taxes. We're talking here about making gifts into a trust free of capital gains tax for family beneficiaries, but again that could change quite easily if they decide to tax gifts to family and make them inheritance tax chargeable. That's another issue. Now that would mean that you would need to take action pretty soon and pretty quickly, and we're not a big fan of advocate of rush decisions, but if you wanted to do that, there's still time in October to create a will and to make the gift. Even if the transfer doesn't go through yet, the principal decision can be made. Some transactions can be done quite quickly and enacted before the end of October, and we will see. So you put all that money into trust, and the trust then doesn't necessarily suffer inheritance tax, because the inheritance tax is only applied when there's a probate administration. If there's no probate, there's no inheritance tax. That's the big issue at the moment. It's the argument for bringing in capital gains tax sooner, but that's another story. In the UK, trusts have a tax liability. They may have a tax during your lifetime. They may have a 10-year tax assessment. That doesn't apply everywhere. So Cyprus Cyprus International Trust, the European office, the EU office is in Cyprus, and Cyprus International Trust, where we run our family trust from, apply no taxes outside Cyprus. So if you've got Cyprus investments, Cyprus business, Cyprus property, they're still going to pay tax on their transactions within Cyprus. But international assets, including property, shares and investments, and dividends, have no tax liability within Cyprus International Trust, no capital gains liability within Cyprus International Trust, no inheritance tax within Cyprus International Trust. The point of the succession is merely to get the assets within the trust, hold them there, and ensure that the trustees and the control and the administration of the trust is to your satisfaction. As a protector and the settler of the trust, you can control it during your lifetime. On your death, it can become more of an issue. And at 93, Rupert Murdoch is trying to change the control post his death to make sure that his chief executive has more of a protector role, a casting vote role that he has at the moment to control the direction and the holdings of the business and the family assets. If you want to consider protecting your family from the cost and delay of probate, firstly, and then potential capital gains and inheritance taxes, secondly, then you can contact us at proactpartnership.com. You don't need to live in Cyprus to benefit from using a tax-free Cyprus International Trust for your succession planning, for your business, investment and property. Can you put pension funds within a trust? That's not necessarily under the existing rules. It's slightly more complicated. But if you're settling cash outside of pension, the subsequent investment holding can be within that trust and can be tax-free. So we can help you with that and make sure the control is what you and your family want to protect the family assets, protect the investments and the assets you built up across border and down generations. You can contact us at proactpartnership.com. We continue to look forward to the Halloween budget. So if you're watching this before the 30th of October, you want to feature on there, we've got some other YouTube and video presentations and advice on how to manage any liability before then. If you want to make gifts and avoid those liabilities, we can consider and we can help you around that time. Changes will come and the establishment, whether that's the former Attorney General, the head of the civil service, which is Sue Gray and Keir Starmer, or the lifetime civil servant that is now in charge of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, the establishment may prevent you from passing on what you've earned, what you've invested in, what you've saved for to your children. But we will do everything we can to assist you and guide you in the way ahead. It's an ever-changing world, and we can look after you and your family interests rather than the government self-interests going ahead. One last thing, I've got to mention it all the way through, property rental. If you've got a private property rental, that private property, residential property rental or commercial property rental, that can be in the trust as well. It's another potential way of protecting that asset as well. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll speak to you again next time. proactpartnership.com, contact us and book a free review for new clients or an advice review for existing clients, and we'll see you again next time.